Okay. Okay, Chair.
My camera and microphone are on, but all I've got is several on the screen.
You should be ready to go, Chair.
Right, okay. Right, I'll introduce everybody now to the committee meeting this afternoon, the 4th of August. Welcome everybody. This is being held fully remotely. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
The meeting is being held in accordance with the emergency legislation that enables the council to hold this meeting remotely, alongside the council constitution, and ensures that the council continue to operate and make democratic decisions in an open and transparent way. I would like to remind members that this meeting is still being live streamed to the public, and can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking directly to the committee to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise. All sections of the members' code of conduct still apply to members in this virtual meeting environment and are as applicable now as are in a traditional meeting setting. Can I also remind members of the meeting to ensure that their chat functionality is switched on, and should they wish to speak on a particular item, to make their request clear in that area, and I will invite you to speak at the relevant point in the meeting, where you would then unmute your microphone and switch your camera back on. Decisions of this remote committee will hold the same weight as a decision of a normal planning committee, provided that the meeting remains quorate and meets its legislative requirement to make a decision. Regardless of whether a member of this meeting is unable to cast their vote due to a technical issues, the decision of the committee will remain valid. I have not received any apologies of absence from any members of the committee as at this moment, so we'll continue with the meeting. Everybody all okay with that?
Yeah.
Right, thank you. The committee agenda for today, as there are no apologies of action, apologies for absence, any declarations of interest at all to be declared? Any declarations?
No.
Yes, Chair. I've got one. 00238, the Welsh School in Caldergot. I'm a governor at the school.
And please state your name for those who can't hear
sorry.
you.
It's Councillor Eason, sorry. Councillor Eason. The Scolly School, I'm a governor at the school. It's a personal, non-prejudicial interest, and I can continue with the committee.
Right, thank you very much. No one else has got any declarations? The next on the agenda is the accuracy of the minutes of the last meeting. Unless there's any need of accuracy, I shall take them as read, or somebody move to read them as accurate. Have I got anybody to move the minutes, please?
Move, Chair.
Anybody to second?
Move, Chair.
They're moved by Councillor Harris and seconded by
Phil Murphy.
Phil Murphy, thank you. And I will
Chair, there's a note in the meeting chat about a problem with the microphone. If you could have a look at it, thank you.
Who's got a problem with the microphone?
Giles Howard, Chair.
Oh yes, I can see that now. I dare say John or Wendy will pick that up in their control bubble. I will sign those minutes.
Councillor Higginson is trying to get on, but he hasn't got on yet. I just spoke to him. He's trying to get in.
Right, thank you. Have you switched your microphone off now, Councillor Eason? I will leave that to the officers to contend with the microphone. We'll now, and I will sign those minutes at the end of the meeting. We'll go now to consider the first application of the afternoon, and this is introduced by Andrew Jones, and it is application DM/2018/01418, and this is Llanfoist. Thank you, Andrew.
Chair, the Councillor Giles Howard has asked for that application to be delayed until later in the agenda because he can't hear anything or get his microphone on. So I don't know whether the order can be changed. That's what the meeting chat says. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, Chair, I've seen that message from Councillor Howard. So if you're agreeable, we'll move that item later until Councillor Howard as ward member is available.
Right, thank you for that. I don't know what's wrong with my screen. I just got a lot of faces on there and not just my face and just Andrew's. So it's rather strange looking at this setup on the screen.
It's because we've all switched our cameras off, Chair.
Yes, but last time I did this, it wasn't set up like this at all. Thank you, Andrew. So we will now go to the second application, if that's okay, and this is with Amy Longford. But we're on the screen now. I've got all of Landfoist.
Yeah, that's fine. Andrew's just sorting the presentation to move to the second application. So
right. Thank you, Amy.
That's okay. Here we go.
Right, thanks, Amy. Carry on.
No problem. Thank you very much. So
I'll read out the application number, Amy, first for anybody who's watching. It's DM/2019/01921. Thank you. In Chepstow.
yes, that's right. This is the application for the Castle Inn in Chepstow for the demolition of the modern extensions and conversion of the original pub building into a single residential unit, and in the erection of 4 new dwellings to the rear with the car parking and associated external works. The application is before you all today as more than 5 objections has been received. The Castle Inn is located towards the eastern end of Bridge Street at the bottom of the hill. The pub is a 3-storey with an attic facing directly onto the street, with later extensions to the rear. The Rio Garden is the subject to the application for the new build, with the associated car park beyond the garden. The site plan there shows you the public house, and then the rear garden in green and the car park to the back. The car park is accessed via a lane with the entrance off Church Street, and the current legal use for the site is a public house with the car park. The application did have the benefit of pre-application advice, where it was advised that in principle the development was acceptable, subject to the usual material considerations. However, the number of dwellings should have been reduced from the originally proposed. So the first slide shows the access to the car park, where the car is adjacent to the white house on the end there. The second picture is looking back up the lane to Church Street from the car park. The third then looking into the car park. Note the white van at the bottom is the extent of the boundary and is the rear of the pub garden at that point. So the next picture is looking into the garden and the rear elevation of the public house. The single-storey lean-to buildings there on, sorry, that's about, yeah. So the single-storey lean-to buildings on the back of the pub there are proposed for demolition, and the 2-storey element that you can see with those 2 windows that's in cream colour, that's to remain. So the building is the dwelling, so that those buildings at the end of the garden there, looking back for the pub behind you. The car park is beyond the fence there. And the next photograph shows the lean-to buildings in more detail there that are proposed to be demolished. Let's move to the next photograph. That property is on the northern boundary of the garden there, with note the stone wall and the vegetation across that. And then the last photograph is the front elevation of the pub. There are no changes to the front elevation of the pub as proposed, only to removal some of the flags and associated pub signs. So the site plan shows, so the site is within the development boundary, it's outside the shopping area, and it is considered to be a sustainable location. Therefore, there's a presumption in favour of development subject to the usual considerations. The officer's report goes into these in great detail, so I'll only highlight a few elements. The site is partly within a C2 flood zone. The small portion of the existing pub facing Bridge Street affected, and a very small portion of the northeast corner of the car park, where there's a tree to the top corner of the car park. Site is a C1 flood zone, which is defensible, and the application was supported by a flood consequence assessment, and NRW have been consulted. The information shows that no part of the new dwellings or their gardens will flood. The risks and consequences of flooding can be managed to an acceptable level. No information is provided in the rate of inundation, as the proposed dwellings will not flood. The preservation of the listed building and the proposed new dwellings comply with the council's objectives and those requirements set out in the TAN. The car park then shows 18 spaces, which meets the council standards, and there were issues in relation to the narrow access, but this is proposed use of the car park for residential only and is considered to be less intensive than the current commercial use, and so highways have not raised any objections, and the bin storage has been amended accordingly. The car park is proposed to be landscaped and demarked, improving the general appearance of its current state, and in addition the proposals will all be subject to SUDS. So the next slide shows the elevations of the properties, adopting a bit of a cottage Gothic style in the main, which is partly found in the area. However, the site is screened from all main vantage points, and so in consideration does not fail to preserve the character of the conservation area. So if we move on, and that shows the front elevation of the public house as proposed, and the rear elevation with the extensions demolished. And again, this is plot number 1, which will be adjacent or the closest new building to the rear of the listed building. And then the next one, plot 2 and 3. So following the proposed demolition of the rear of the listed building, sorry, can we go back to the street scene with all of those 4 properties that shows it in more context? There we go. There's 10 metres between the back of the listed building and plot 1. Plot 1 is 3 stories with a ridge height of 9.5, and the 2 properties in between are lower, and the fourth number, plot 4, is 7.9 metres. So if we could just go back to the site plan as well, please. There we go. It's considered there's sufficient breathing space around the rear of the listed building, and that the context of the urban environment means that the setting of the listed building is preserved. The site is bordered on the north and the east by residential properties that are 16 metres and 21 metres away from the new build respectively. The site is bordered by the vegetation and a stone wall to the north, and a car park and a tall stone wall to the east. These intervening distances are therefore considered to be acceptable. To the south, the old board school, which is just highlighted in a very faint line towards the south of the plot boundary, is not in residential use, and that's 13 metres away. However, again, there's a stone wall and some vegetation, which we saw in an earlier photograph, providing screening. Again, these distances are considered to be acceptable. There are a number of trees on the northern boundary of the site, some with root protection zones, which have created the green space to the north in front of the properties. Some of these trees are proposed to be removed, and some are subject to separate applications, as they are all protected as being within the conservation area. However, as per the discussions with our tree officer, the retained trees are considered acceptable, and a condition is attached as per the officer's tree requirements. As per the council's policy, the development is subject to an affordable housing contribution. The dwelling created in the existing pub is exempt, as this is a conversion of a listed building. However, the 4 new dwellings to the rear do meet the requirements for a commuted sum, which is just over 35,000 in total, and will be secured through the 106. As a result, the proposals are considered to be policy compliant and therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in the officer's report and section 106. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Very detailed, and I'm sure there's comments going to be from our members of the committee. There's no public speaking today. I'm just wondering whose ward is this. I believe it's Jez Becker, Councillor Becker. So please raise your hand in the chat bar if you wish to speak.
Can you consider my hand raised, Chair, because I can't quite see where the
I can see Peter Clark's hand is raised. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, Chairman. On the elevations of the properties on plot 2, the roof on the right-hand side is lacking any fascias or barges. And could we please have those added so they match the rest of the development, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
You can go back and have that conversation.
Right. Thank you. Now I go to Councillor Becker.
Hello, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, I had some communication problems there at the beginning. It's Councillor Becker. I was just hoping to come out and come back in. So would you mind if I spoke on the application quickly?
Yes, that's fine, Councillor Becker.
Okay, I'll keep my camera off because I seem to be having some issues with the bandwidth. But yeah, I mean, I know the Castle Inn very well. One of my children was actually named there. We had the ceremony in the rooms that are going to be demolished. The building to the south of Board School, although it's not going to be residential, it is going to be in constant use as the new base of MENCAP. So, you know, I'm a little concerned that these houses are very close and overlooking the areas that they will use. I'm also concerned about, you know, just how many they've crammed in. It seems overbuilt for the area that it's in, and especially with that narrow access car park, which we already have problems with residents getting in and out of there. So yeah, I'll keep it brief because of my connection, but essentially I would be against approving the scheme as it stands because I think that it's overbuilt, and I'm also concerned about the way it overlooks MENCAP to the south. So.
Any other comment at all now, Councillor Becker? Right, anybody else? No more hands are raised at the moment. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think one of the comments that the Town Council made was, in a sense, the same as Councillor Becker. They were concerned about overdevelopment. I think it's largely due to the poor access. In terms of parking, there's 18 parking spaces, and effectively there are 5 dwellings because there's the original pub and then the 4 properties, which is 3 parking spaces per dwelling. But obviously the pub itself, which presumably will be changed into residential accommodation, is quite large. So you know, obviously 3 spaces is the maximum. So I think there is a question about overdevelopment in view of the access issues. One of the issues I'm also concerned about is to do with the waste bin, because it says it can go against a wall, but you're actually talking about a sort of almost like a flat type situation where there's going to be waste for 5 properties. Now, I don't know how they deal with that, whether it's communal bins or in flats you have often have enclosed areas with waste, and they will actually take up some of the parking spaces when you see these very large communal bins. So it's not really clear how those are dealt with. So I think that if this application goes through, it will be helpful, because the answer in the report says it's just going to be against a stone wall and it won't affect nearby properties in terms of smells and so forth. If you're going to go ahead with the application, and I think it needs an informative to say how waste is going to be collected and stored, and get an agreement with our recycling and environmental health people to locate the best place for the bins. And you know, when you think one property can have about 2 or 3 different types of bins, you're talking about, for 5 properties, quite a large storage area, and I don't think this has been properly considered, or how recycling will access this. And on the parking side, it's not a terribly good access, and you've seen that there's double yellow lines round about, so that if there's any overspill parking in that area, it's not really a good idea. So those are my particular concerns about this application. Thank you.
Amy, would you like to comment on the bin storage before I take the next question?
Yes, please. Thank you. So there's a couple of issues there. One, in relation to the access. Yes, this was raised by Highways because the access is narrow and it is a single track access. However, it is straight, so if you are coming out or going in, you'll be able to see at the other exit point, you'll be able to see what's coming or going. The amount of car movements to and from the site will be considerably less than could be at the present use as a car park or the pub, which could be continual movements throughout the daytime and into the evening as people came and left the pub with no kind of cap on how many movements could be carried out. Here, you're only going to be using the space for residential to those 5 properties. So it's anticipated that those traffic movements will be significantly less, and that's been corroborated by Highways. In relation to the bin store, on the site plan there, you can see the very bottom corner of the car park. That's it there. That is where the bin store has been agreed to be placed. I take your point, there are no elevations of that bin store, so we could add a condition on to ask for full details of the bin store. I'm sure that the applicant would be happy with that, so that we can control those elements. But in respect, it is considered to be that car park would be a betterment, especially with the landscaping that's proposed, and the access traffic movements will be reduced.
I think, Chair, could I ask a further question?
Very quickly, please.
Yeah, it's just, if you look at the diagram, it's just that basically, if you're talking about the very large refuge collection lorries that we have, where is the turning circle for them to be able to, because you can't really reverse out a big refuge lorry, reverse out of that single track thing, out of that single access. So I'm a bit concerned about how the collection is going to be practically arranged in view of the fact that you've got to go into the site and there's only a single track way in. Thank you.
Yes, the access track is bordered by 2 in separate ownerships, is not part of the applicant's ownership, so there wasn't an ability to widen that access at all. So bins would have to be brought to the unmute on now. Yeah. The bins will have to be brought out of the site for the refuse truck to be able to unload. The camera's off.
Councillor Higginson,
yeah, cause a practical problem, that's all. Thank you.
Next in line is Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I was going to talk about the access, but Amy's adequately done that. As Amy says, you know, it's a clear line of sight, and anyone coming out will be able to see anyone coming in, and vice versa. And having lived up single track lane for 40 years, it's not a problem, especially if you actually living in one of the properties. So I don't have a problem with that. As regarding the rubbish, it doesn't necessarily have to be a large vehicle that goes in there. I've got a small vehicle that comes up my lane, and you know, I'm sure that the rubbish can be overcome, and the access obviously, as far as I'm concerned, isn't a problem. But what we're ending up with is 4 very good properties, new properties on an ugly plot that's totally unused at the moment, and it's just got to be a good thing. We need housing, and I'm one that's always going on about, oh, we can't have this and that because we need to park our cars. Let's just think about, let's get the housing and worry too much about people not having to put their cars immediately close to where they live. I'm all for the housing, and I think it's a good scheme. And I propose, if anyone's going, that we accept it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Next is Councillor Murphy, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And most of what I was going to say has just been said. Just to support a little bit of it. Yes, refuse vehicles, it's a restricted access in the streets approaching it, so there'll be smaller vehicles anyway. Access would only be the same as a single track road, as Councillor Harris said. But the question I had was over the actual car parking spaces. Yeah, there's 18, so that's 3 spares. So Amy, would we be actually allocating specific spaces to actual properties and therefore 3 visitor spaces, or is it going to be a free-for-all? Is there any thought being put into that?
As far as I'm aware, they're visitor spaces for all properties and they'd be used on a first come first served basis. There is additional parking around in the area, and then from the front of the site there is a car park as well, which is not too much of a walk away. So there are other opportunities for people to park sensibly in the area. Yeah,
they can park opposite in the castle car park anyway, can't they?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I'm
happy to second, by the way, if you're looking for a seconder.
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Murphy. I think when you get those situations, it more or less becomes a habit as to who sort of parks where, if they're in long-term residence there. I have nobody else in the chat bar that wishes to speak. So I'm looking for somebody to move the application, please.
Chair, I've done that already.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Harris, you've moved and it's been seconded by Councillor Murphy. So please, could you all go to the chat bar and you will see it come up as to how to vote. I'm sure you.
Sorry, can I ask if there's any conditions, Chair, before, you know, with regard to.
Amy could list all of the conditions if you so wish, Councillor Brown.
Sorry, an additional condition about the refuge or not?
If I just sum up
yes.
What you are all voting on. So the recommendation is to approve application DM 2019-01921, demolition of modern extensions and conversion of public house into residential with the erection of 4 new dwellings, the rear car park and associated external works, subject to the conditions outlined in the officer's report, with the additional condition in relation to full details of the bin store.
Thank you, Amy. I think as it's more or less all been agreed that in these circumstances you do have much smaller lorries as well going in and out. So there won't be any concern as to the access for them. Right, Councillor, is that okay with you now, Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you. I thought that you normally went back to the ward member before you voted, but you know, that's
he
okay.
He didn't wish to comment, I don't think, anymore.
Sorry, that was more for broadband purposes. I'm happy with the grilling that Louise gave it. I've said that I'm against the overbuilt nature of it.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. Councillor Harris has moved approval. He's got a seconder for approval with Councillor Murphy. Could I ask you now to go to the chat bar and appropriately put your vote in and then hold it for a while, and then you can submit then lower down on the chat bar. Everyone clear in that now? The chat bar is there for you to vote now.
I haven't got a chat bar, Chair.
Have you scrolled?
Yeah, scrolling up, scrolling down. See if I can find it. No, I can't find it. Yeah, got it now. It's up.
Everyone managed to vote? Nobody else
Yeah.
having a problem?
I think we've had 13
Denzel,
responses
is that
now.
you? Denzel, is that you? Thank you, Denzel.
Yeah.
You will now give the result.
Okay, thank you. So we've had 13 responses now. There are 11 for and 2 against, and no abstentions, so that motion is being carried.
Thank you very much indeed. And we'll now go on to the next application. Unless, is it possible, has anybody been speaking to Councillor Howard to know if he's ready for us to go back to Llanfoist?
Councillor Howard isn't in the meeting yet.
Right, so we'll
Chair,
carry
so-
on to the third one.
Yes, please.
Right, thank you, Craig. We'll now go back to application DM 2019-019943, and this is a development in Caldecott. And I believe, Phil, you're presenting this?
That's correct, Chair. Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to identify yourself? I'm afraid I didn't ask the others to do so, especially.
That's okay. Yeah, my name's Philip Thomas. I'm Development Services Manager with the Council. I'm presenting this application DM 2019-01943 for a new dwelling adjacent to 15 Burns Crescent, Caldecott. So this application seeks full planning permission for the development of a detached dwelling on land forming part of the residential curtilage of 15 Burns Crescent, which is a semi-detached property in a corner plot with a large side garden in a cul-de-sac in Caldecott. So you can see the site edge red there. You can see that number 15 is earmarked there, and it's one of a pair of semi-detached houses. Sorry, Andrew, if you can just take us. That's an aerial photograph. Yeah, that's showing the block plan, which shows the dwelling alongside number 15. The garaging that's in the corner of the site, which we'll see on a photograph shortly, is being demolished to accommodate parking for the new dwelling, and there'll be 2 parking spaces in front of number 15 off the driveway at the head of the cul-de-sac. It'll be the same floor slab and same eaves and ridge height as the number 15 itself. Sorry, yeah, so if you could carry on. That's the elevational detail. So it's quite difficult actually to see this plot, as we'll see from the photographs, because it's in the corner, and it'll be largely screened from views by the pair of number 13 and number 15 and surrounding houses in the area. So it's going to be smooth rendered and brown roof tiles and UPVC windows. So we can just move on, thank you. Yeah, that's the floor plan, so it's 3-bedroom. And then you see number 15 on the end, which is the host property. The driveway will be shared, where that, I think it's a Fiesta, is parked there. And the porch for number 15 will be demolished to accommodate more comfortably 2 parking spaces in front of number 15. And yeah, you can see that more clearly. There's a dormer property called Hermes, which you see the white gable end thereof, which is beyond the application site itself. So we just move on to the next one. Yeah, that shows the garage and carport in the corner of the plot of number 15 to be removed to make more space around the new dwelling. That's the structure to be removed in the corner there. And then that's looking towards the side elevation of number 20 Burns Crescent, and those are 2 secondary windows. One's a landing by the look of it, and one's either a bathroom or a secondary window to the first floor bedroom there. So the main window to that room will be on the back of the property. That's looking into the plot, looking towards Shakespeare Row and Severn View, which are actually quite a distance from the site. There's actually a roadway in between Severn View and Hermes, the bungalow there, before you get to this plot itself. So moving on, and that's Hermes, which is a dormer bungalow. And then that's looking more into the plot, which will be where the house is and its rear garden towards Shakespeare Drive, which will be 11 metres sorry, 21 metres from the actual number 1 to the rear of the new property. So let's just have a look back. Yeah, that's looking further back, and you can see Shakespeare Drive and the fence and the buildings to be removed to accommodate the new dwelling. And that's the road leading into Burns Crescent, to give you a context of where it is in Caldicot. And then that's Burns Crescent itself, and the application site's at the head of the cul-de-sac, far left, top left-hand side there. So again, you really won't see this property from that particular view because of the intervening houses, which will block views. So the main issues are, as outlined in the report, the effect of the proposed dwelling on local residential amenity, and whether there's the ability to get a safe access and adequate off-street parking for the proposal and existing dwelling. So the plans submitted, as we've seen, show one 3-bed dwelling measuring 8.7 metres wide, 7.6 metres deep, with a pitch roof with a maximum height of 6.8 metres to the pitch. Externally, the dwelling will be finished with smooth rendered elevations, concrete roof tiles and UPVC windows and doors. And the property would be developed in the side garden of number 15, as we've seen, and would have the same finished floor level, ridge and eave height as the existing dwelling, but would be 1 metre in front of the building line formed by the pair number 13 and number 15. Vehicular access to the new dwelling would be via a shared driveway with the existing property, leading to 2 parking spaces to the front of number 15. An existing garage in the southeastern corner of the site, as we've seen, adjacent to the garage of number 20 Burns Crescent, would be demolished to facilitate the development. And following the demolition of an existing porch, parking for the existing dwelling would be provided on the existing front garden. An on-site turning area would be provided between the existing and proposed dwellings. Both the existing and the proposed dwellings would benefit from an area of private amenity space to the rear, and that would be a depth of 11 metres. In terms of the value added to the scheme by your officers, the proposal has been reduced to a more appropriate scale by reducing the scheme from 2 dwellings to 1 detached home. Although the proposal would result in the subdivision of the plots, consider that the site is of a size capable of accommodating an additional dwelling, plus the necessary parking and amenity space required for the existing and proposed properties, without appearing as an overdevelopment of the site. While the proposed dwelling would sit slightly forward of the established building line, given the position of the plot at the end of the cul-de-sac and the relatively minor depth of the projection, it is considered that the siting would not have a detrimental impact on the overall character and appearance of the area to warrant refusal of the application. The distance of 11 metres would be maintained between the windows of the proposed dwelling and the boundary with 1 Shakespeare Drive to the rear, while there would be 21 metres between the respective habitable room windows of each property. A 12.5 metre distance would be maintained between the side of the proposed dwelling and the rear elevation of Hermes to the east. An almost 10 metres distance will be maintained between the windows and the front elevation of the proposed dwelling and the 2 secondary windows at first floor level of number 20 Burns Crescent, which we saw in the photograph. And these distances are considered sufficient in the context of this urban location and compatible with the adopted infill supplementary planning guidance. There is a drafting error in paragraph 613 regarding the impact on the property Hermes. There are actually no windows proposed in the side elevation of the proposed dwelling, and the impact on Hermes is considered acceptable given the separation distance between the dwellings and the orientation to the west of Hermes. There is a condition proposed to ensure a 3rd parking space for the proposed dwelling, while 2 spaces would be provided for the existing dwelling, and highways are satisfied with this arrangement. A biodiversity enhancement scheme for the plot has also been conditioned. So we would recommend approval subject to the section 106 to receive an affordable housing contribution of £4,600. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Phil. Very detailed report as usual. I'm not sure who the local member is for this area. Councillor Easton, is it you?
No, it's me.
David Evans.
All right, Councillor Evans, would you like to start with your comments, please, as you're a member of the committee?
Yeah. Yes. Chair. I went down this morning and had a look at this, and had a good look around, and I can't see no reason why this planning application can't be put through as accepting, as Phil laid out and explained in depth the content of the application. And he's right as he says, it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. It's not coming out onto a busy road. That was one of my main concerns, but after going down today, I'm quite happy with the application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. I haven't seen any more hands come up in the chat bar yet for wishing to speak. Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what the width of the access was supposed to be, because it looks like the highways report was written possibly when there were more dwellings proposed originally, so I wasn't quite sure what the width for 2 dwellings was supposed to be. And also I'm not quite sure about the parking spaces, because it's a new 3-bedroomed property which will need three bedrooms, and I think, is it 2 spaces for the original one, and do we know how many bedrooms the current semi-detached house has? I mean, I'm just checking about the parking standards, particularly if you look at that picture that's got 3 vehicles in it, that one that you've got on the screen at the moment, you know, because obviously there's quite a bit of parking in there just because of, I mean, it just happens obviously because of when the photograph was taken, but you know, obviously I think it's important to ensure that there's the required level of parking, and I wasn't quite sure whether that was the case. Thank you.
Phil?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of access, I think manual for streets this is a private drive, so it's not a street, obviously. Normally you can go down to, in this sort of situation where it's obvious that you can see vehicles approaching as you're coming out of the site. There is an on-site turning facility as well to help you come in and out of the site. That actual width can be narrowed down to probably 2.5 to 3 meters wide in that instance. So and that can work quite happily as a shared driveway because it's such a short stretch from the actual adopted highway, as you can see, because the adopted highway is up to where the turning head is there. So highways don't have an issue with just 2 properties sharing that short stretch of driveway.
They did when it was 3, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the initial objection was to 3, whereas now that it's been reduced to 2, and they have requested that a 3rd parking space for the 3-bedroom dwelling is provided, which can be provided looking at the site plan, then they don't have an objection to that. A lot of the properties, I should imagine the existing properties, either 2 or 3 bedroom, they are providing 2 spaces for it and a turning facility. So I think given the sustainable location of where it is, I think that's as far as we can go, really. Most of the properties around there in the semi-detached houses have got parking for up to 2 cars rather than 3. So I think in the context of where it is, that's as far as is reasonable to go in terms of providing parking for the existing dwelling whilst allowing obviously a new home to be built in its curtilage, and providing a home for somebody else and an affordable housing contribution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Next is Councillor Maureen Powell, please.
Right. That's it. All I was going to say was, if I believe David Evans, did he propose we accepted it? If he did, I'm happy to second it.
Right, thank you, Councillor Powell. Anybody else wish to comment? Right. And Councillor Evans, do you wish to comment at all since we've had other comments? Councillor Evans?
No, Madam Chair, I'm just happy to propose that we accept the application.
Right, thank you. And you'll have a seconder in Councillor Powell.
Yes.
Is there anybody? I think we can now go to the chat bar, actually. There's no more comments, thank you.
So we've now had 11 votes for, so that motion is clearly passed. There are no against and no abstentions.
Right, thank you very much, Denzel. So that has been passed. We now go to the next application, and I haven't heard any more, had no more comment about the Linfoist application yet, so we might as well carry on down the agenda and go to Caldicott again, and I believe, Amy, you're presenting this. This is DM/2020/00238.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm previously, my name's Amy Longford. I'm Development Management Area Manager. This application, DM/2020/00238, is for extensions to Sandy Lane Primary School, one extension to the primary school building and the other to the nursery building. The application is before you today as it's submitted by Monmouthshire County Council. It's noted that the local authority has certain permitted development rights to extend schools. However, cumulatively, these two extensions exceed this allocated provision and therefore require planning permission. So as per the site plan, you can see the school's located to the northern end of Sandy Lane, with the primary school facing the northeastern end of the site onto the main road. The nursery building is a small building towards the rear of the school. So the slides show the positions of the two extensions. There's the satellite view. The first extension is to the school on the northern edge of the building, infilling a gap currently used for parking. And the second to the nursery building, again to the northern elevation adjacent to the car park. These extensions are to provide additional classroom and teaching space to accommodate pupils for the nursery and the kitchen, bathroom area and play space. The next slide shows the extension to the school, the main primary school building. The design takes on a more modern approach. However, this is due mainly to ensuring maximum thermal efficiency and meeting modern standards. The change in the design is not considered to be detrimental, and it is considered to be justified on the basis of making a more efficient extension. There is a loss of a few parking spaces. However, on balance, the need for the classroom is given more weight. So the next slide shows the extension to, so that's the extension on plan for the school building, the green and red space, and the grey area shown as the extension, elevation D and E. So this slide shows the extension to the nursery. Again, the nursery is a slightly different age of building, and the extension is more in keeping with this style. It maintains the same height as the existing, with an intersecting pitched roof and the same materials. So the first photograph, also there's the extension. The photograph shows the extension to the school, which will be facing the front to the roadside. The next photograph shows a closer view, and it occupies the space within that coloured fence in front of the two cars, you can see. Again, that's looking from the site towards the main road, and again where that the extension will infill the space with the coloured fence and the two parking spaces that will be lost. That is looking to the northern boundary of the school. The extension is relatively small and in proportion with the existing building, and there's no additional impact on the amenity of the adjacent properties given the current situation. And the car park at the rear of the site of the school is maintained as existing. The next photograph shows the nursery building, the northern edge of the school. The extension is relatively small to this building and in proportion with the building. There's no additional impact on the amenity of the adjacent properties over the current situation. Again, that's looking at the position of the extension, which will be just in front of those trees. And again, properties on the other side of the car park, their amenity will be maintained as existing. Overall, the extensions are considered to be relatively minor and the impact on the adjacent properties would not be detrimental given the current use of the site. The proposals are considered to be policy compliant and are therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you very much, Amy. Is this you again, Councillor David Evans, or is it Councillor Eason?
It's Councillor Eason's ward this time, Chair.
Right, thank you, Councillor Eason. I'm sure you wish to have comments on this application.
Well, it's a council extension to the school. I fully support this. The school needs the extra space for classes and for the mithrin. Amy has made all the positive comments, so I don't need to make any more comment other than to move that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. Anyone else wish to comment? Now, Councillor Alan Davis, I believe you wish to comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's very nice to see that the demand is there for this facility to be built, and I would like to second the proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Louise Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's good to see, obviously, extended classrooms where they're needed. I would also like the Education Department to actually consider the fact that there is a school in Chepstow, a primary school, that's had a porter cabin for must be 25 years and hasn't provided a proper building extension for it. And I just hope that at some stage that's going to be considered as well. But obviously, you know, this is a favourable application to improve classroom use. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been moved for approval, unless I don't think there's any need for Amy to give any more clarity on what she's already done with the presentation. Councillor Eason has moved approval and it has been seconded, I believe, by Councillor Evans, was it?
Councillor Davis.
Councillor Davis, sorry, Councillor Davis. Could you please go to the chat bar now and make your votes known, please?
So we've had 12 responses. For 12 of 4, there are no against, no abstentions, so that vote has passed.
Thank you very much, Denzel. Clearly approved. We now go on to the next one, and if we have clarity, we would go to Linfoist at the end of the applications that we have already on the agenda. And this number 5 on the agenda really is DM 2020/00716, and this is a 2-storey extension, and this is in Castle Street, Usk. Right, thank you. I believe, Andrew, you are presenting this application.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just by way of introduction, my name is Andrew Jones, Development Management Area Manager. And yes, this is a householder application, extensions and alterations to a dwelling in Castle Street, Usk, as well as the erection of a replacement garage. The application is presented to Planning Committee today for the sole reason that the applicant is related to a county councillor. So the commission is sought for a 2-storey and part single-storey extension, as well as a replacement single garage. You can see the site location on screen there within the town of Usk. So I'll just move right on. So you can see the photographs there. I'll just quickly run through these for the members' benefit. That's the front of the dwelling. You can see there in photograph number 2, that's a glimpsed view of the existing garage to be demolished. Photograph 3 shows an existing conservatory which spans the entire width of the dwelling at the rear, That's to be demolished also. Photograph 4 shows the garage to go, and then photograph 5 shows the boundary hedge there with the adjoining semi-detached property, and photograph 6 details the rear garden of the application site. So this is, say, a single-story extension, which is to be demolished, currently running across the rear of the dwelling. You can see the existing and proposed plans on screen. So the single-story part would be located to the common boundary with the adjoining property, which is known as Stella. And you can see there that the two-story element would be positioned away from the common boundary. With regard to external materials, these would include white UPVC windows, red facing brick to the lower level, and white rendered walls to the upper floor with dark brown roof tiles, and these would match the finishes of the existing house. The garage, replacement garage, you can see there, and its position to the rear would be finished with red brick also. So in terms of our material considerations, firstly and primarily with regard to residential amenity impact, the element of the extension on the common boundary would be single story only, and the two-story element set approximately 4.2 meters away from this. No windows are proposed to the side elevations, and whilst the Juliet balcony wouldn't afford any additional unacceptable privacy compared to the windows on the existing rear elevation. There have been some concerns raised by neighbours. However, as detailed in the officer's report, a number of these points are civil matters. Issues raised in respect of damp and rainwater runoff are not substantiated by any evidence. And again, any damage there would be a civil matter. In terms of the design, as you'll see on the slides, both extension and the garage are of appropriate scale and form and would all be finished with materials to match those of the existing dwelling. The site is within the conservation area. However, no objection is offered from the council's heritage officer, and therefore, subject to the conditions set out within the officer report, it's presented to you today, members, with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't know who the next one associated in us would be to this. Anyway, I'll leave it open for comment for the committee. No raised hands yet at all? Anybody wish to comment?
Chair.
Right, Councillor, yes, I have now got in my chat bar Councillor Murphy. If you first, please, and then I'll take Councillor Howard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was only coming in really to say that I can't see anything wrong with this as far as I can see. It's quite ready to be approved, so I'm happy to propose it.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Howard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Welcome to the committee.
Yes, thank you. At last, I'm surprised all the hair dye hasn't fallen out. My hair's gone grey. It's been that stressful. There we are. Yeah, I was only going to second the application. It's fine, isn't it? It's a reasonable householder development. It wouldn't normally come to committee if it wasn't for the relationship with the member. So I'll second it, Chair. Thanks.
Right, thank you, Councillor Howard. Are you all okay now and up and running to go back to your application or in your ward?
Yes, thank you.
Right, thank you. As there are no more comments, no one else has raised their hand on this application, so could you all please go to the chat bar? It has been up for approval, moved by Councillor Murphy and seconded by Councillor Howard. Thank you.
Chair, the number on the chat bar says 717 and the application is 716.
Yeah, I just noticed that myself, Councillor. Is there a problem with that application, Andrew?
The number I've got is 716 DM 2020 00716.
Chair, if I can come in, that's an error on my part. It was a typo. It should be 6.
Right.
Can we change
Thank you,
it then, Chair?
Richard. we're all okay then, ready to go and vote for that as it is. We're all understanding that it should be a 6716 and not 717. Thank you.
So we've now had 13 responses. So on the understanding that all the members are in agreement that they were voting on 00716, there have been 13 for, no against and no abstentions, and so that motion is again clearly passed.
Right, thank you very much, Denzel. And now, thank for everybody's patience. We can now go back to the first application of the afternoon. That is at Llanfoist, DM/2018/01418. And I believe, Andrew, you're presenting this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. DM 2018-01418, land southeast of Sunnybrook, Llanellan Road, Llanfoist. And this is a full application for the erection of a new detached two-storey dwelling located in the garden of that property known as Sunnybrook in the village of Llanfoist. And you can see that the application site edged in red on your screen, as there have been objections from more than 5 households. Like photographs and members' benefit. So photograph property known as Sunnybrook's, the sort of the host dwelling in this instance. Second photograph shows the site frontage onto Llanellan Road, and the third photograph shows the sort of southerly extent of the site. And the fourth photograph shows the view back towards the existing host dwelling, Sunnybrook. And number 5 is a view taken from the west. So you can see there on screen the site layout. So the position of the dwelling within the plot you can see there on screen, and it would be served by a new vehicular access as well as a pedestrian access directly onto Llanellan Road. Turning space would also be provided within the site, with parking for 3 vehicles and 1 additional space for the existing dwelling, Sunnybrook. The dwelling itself would, as you've seen from the site plan, have a T-shaped footprint, and as you can see on screen, it adopts a simple traditional design with a stone gable to the front and painted render to all other walls, including a natural slate roof. Now, I would like just to point out for members' attention a slight discrepancy on the plans. You can see on the proposed site plan in the sort of dining come living room area some French doors that are opening out into the garden area. This is not actually replicated on the elevational drawing, so if members were minded to approve, perhaps that detailing could be agreed via the delegated panel. In terms of, let's just show you there that you get patio door. So in terms then of our material considerations, principally the site is located in the defined settlement of Llanfoist, which is a rural secondary settlement as per the adopted LDP, and therefore given the site's location within the settlement and is an area identified as suitable for additional housing, the principle to develop 1 dwelling is considered acceptable. With regard to affordable housing in the council's latest supplementary planning guidance, the applicant has agreed to enter into a 106 agreement to pay a sum of £7,795.20 towards local affordable housing. In terms of residential amenity impact, the officer's report provides a very detailed breakdown of distances towards the surrounding properties. And with regards to this, while some distances are shy of standard distances, in these instances, these involve much tighter angles as well as front-to-front relationships across Llanellan Road. Third parties have raised concerns with ground levels. However, the levels provided indicate that the finished floor levels will be similar to the existing site levels and approximately 1.3 metres higher than the road level and half a metre lower than the existing patio area to the rear of Sunnybrook. The height of the dwelling from the finished floor level is 7.83 metres, and this proposed height, taking account the ground levels also, is not considered by officers to be unacceptable or to have an adverse impact on neighbouring properties. In terms of highway safety, the scheme has been amended following officer negotiations to increase the number of parking spaces, and this also followed an original objection from the Highways Authority. The amended plans, as I noted earlier, now include a compensatory parking space for Sunnybrook and has seen the objection withdrawn from the Highways Authority. In terms of visual impact and design, the area features a wide variety of house types and architectural styles, including both modern and traditional forms. And as noted earlier, the dwelling would adopt a simple traditional form with appropriate external finishes. The stone boundary wall at the front would be retained, whilst other boundary enclosures would be managed by a planning condition. Finally, and a key consideration for this particular application, in relation to drainage infrastructure, the site is adjacent to two trunk water mains owned by Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water. Following negotiation, the dwelling has been moved away from the predicted location. As members will have seen in the officer's report, a condition is proposed that would require the investigation to ensure the development does not harm the mains, and this approach has been agreed by Welsh Water themselves. If, however, in the event further repositioning would be required, then the applicant would have to make a fresh planning application. However, officers are satisfied that all reasonable measures have been taken to determine this application in its current location. Therefore, subject to the signing of the Section 106 for the payment detailed previously and all of the conditions set out in the officer's report, the application is presented to members today with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Right, Councillor Howard, do you wish to comment first of all, as it's your ward?
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. I was contacted by residents on this application and would have asked for it to come to committee to consider the concerns had there not been sufficient objections. And I don't have an issue with the design of the house. It's fine, or even the principle. And I know, given that the possibly the details for the trunk main can be agreed with Welsh Water, I'm not going to get anywhere with that one, and neither am I going to get anywhere with the highway objection, given that highways haven't raised an issue or they've withdrawn their objection. But where I'm not comfortable is with the matter of the amenity of the neighbours. And I did look through the plans online as well, because obviously the ones that come in the presentation, you can't see all of the detail. And what I thought was missing and would have helped would be a better block plan, because the plans that have been provided only show the dwelling in the constraints of the site itself and not its relationship with the surrounding houses to the northwest, to the northeast and the southwest in particular. And I think that's possibly necessary to be able to judge the impact on amenity. I went on GIS to measure distances and roughly plotted in my head the distance from the existing dwelling, Sunnybrook. I think there's 19 metres between the side elevation of that and that of the new dwelling, so I could get an idea of where it's placed on site. And that said, while I understand where Andrew's coming from in terms of the angle of skew between the habitable windows of the new house and those on the opposite side of the road in particular, that it to some degree is what's the word I'm looking for? The effect of that skew is limited by the fact that the new dwelling is going to be higher. And as Andrew pointed out, we've had the proposed floor levels, and it's been explained to us that the site is about 1.3 metres higher than the road. The dwellings on the opposite side, and in particular the house known as Escol, and I think it's number 50 Woodland Crescent, are quite close. They're well within the normal distances you'd allow between opposing elevations. Rule of thumb, as you know, Chair, is usually 21 to 22 metres. These are well below that, and I think without looking at the report, one of them is about 16 and a half metres. So the point I'm coming to is I think the absence of a plan plotting that house so we can see how it sits with the others doesn't help make a judgment in terms of the effect on amenity. But even so, I think it's the habitable room windows of the first floor front elevation are going to be too close to the opposing dwellings to a point where I think they're either perception or in actuality will cause overlooking and possibly will affect outlook to an unacceptable degree. And for that reason, I would ask committee members to consider deferring it until we have to the next committee meeting, so that we can have a plan plotting the house within the red line area relative to the other dwellings. And ideally, I would say there ought to be a section cutting between roughly number 2, the orchard, through the site through to either number 50 or to Escol on the opposite side, so we can see the impact of the ground levels. If committee aren't minded to support that request, what I would say is, as a bare minimum, is that there needs to be a condition on the application preventing any alterations to the roof. In respect of number 2, to the orchard to the southeast, there aren't any habitable room windows in the rear elevation. There is one serving a landing on the first floor, but of course that would be if somebody chose to put a dormer in the rear plane, as they might be able to under permitted development, then that clearly would have a direct overlooking towards number 2. So yeah, in the first instance, Chair, I'd ask members to consider deferring it until we can have some improved plans. If members won't do that, then please can we have a condition restricting alterations to the roof, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Sheila Woodhouse next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to support Councillor Howard's proposal and second that it is deferred, because I too, when I was reading through the report, I would like more clarity on the actual location of the house and the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Murphy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Trouble switching my mic on. Can you go back to the block plan such as it is? Because looking at that, it doesn't really matter the way I'm looking at it, where the house is, although I think we can judge where it is. It doesn't affect anything other than the people across the road, and it would be the same distance as the existing properties in relation to those across the road. So I take the point over the roof. I'm quite happy to support that, but I don't think we really need to defer it on the basis that has been suggested, simply because it only falls within the street scene that's existing anyway. We've been to that site quite a few times for various reasons. I feel I know it quite well, and it's certainly a plot which is ripe for development. So personally, I'm happy with it. As I say, it only would give the same distance between the new property and the one across the road as exists on the existing properties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I believe I've got Craig who wishes to speak.
No, sorry, Chair, could I just come back on those points there?
Yes, you can do, because to me, I'm looking at the block plan myself and looking at the road in between 2 lots of dwellings. Further along the road, I mean, there's dwellings that are very close to the road. So I agree with Councillor Murphy there. I cannot see the big difference of what this will make to other houses and the proximity of one another along the road. Anyway, Andrew, you carry on and comment, please.
Key points there. Firstly, I think when read in conjunction, the site location plan you can see on screen, as well as the site plan, I think gives a fairly accurate representation when read in conjunction of where the dwelling would be positioned. No, been able to make a balanced recommendation on those privacy issues. So I obviously it's for members to decide, but I share the views expressed by yourself and Councillor Murphy that there is enough information when those plans are read in conjunction to allow a consideration of privacy impact. On Councillor Howard's second point in relation to permitted development rights and potential roof alterations. That's a very valid point, and I think that's something that we could quite simply be encapsulated in a reasonable planning condition to remove those permitted development rights, so that any roof alterations there were put back to the council to consider, whether it be residential amenity or indeed visual impact. So on the second point, yes, I would fully agree.
Right, anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Howard, do you wish to comment now? And then I'll ask Andrew then to sum up everything, and we'll have a vote on whether we defer, and we'll also then take a vote as to whether we carry on and vote on the application as it stands today with what Andrew sums up. Councillor Giles, please. Howard.
Yeah, thanks again. Okay, I accept the arguments of other members, and you know, I don't necessarily agree with their view. The one thing I would say is, looking at the existing relationship between properties there, it isn't quite as obvious as it would appear on the map, because some of the ones further along the road are actually bungalows, and there's some pretty tall boundary treatments there. And I'd also, you know, mention that we're determining applications by the current plan and not a historical built relationship that was probably on the back of development that happened 60 plus years ago. And you know, the development here would be, how can I put it, new to the people in Escol and in Woodland Crescent and the dwellings behind. Anybody who would have living in those properties around there will probably have already been aware of the proximity of the other dwellings when they purchased the house, or before they moved in. So that's not quite the point. But okay, if members don't want to defer it, you know, that's up to them. But at the very least, if that condition could be put on there regarding the roof alterations, that wouldn't be quite so bad. But I'm still going to move a deferral, and obviously the vote will go whichever way it will. But thank you, Chair, and thank you also for deferring it to the end of the meeting.
Right, thank you also, Councillor Howard. I believe Craig wishes to comment. Your hand is raised, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify some issues in relation to some of the distances that were outlined in the report. So we've got 18 metres to Sunnybrook, which is the existing property, 16.5 to Escol. There's 28 metres to the Haven, 16 and 19 to the Orchard. So it's quite significant there in terms of privacy distances between those properties. And obviously officers have reviewed this on site, looked at the amenity issues, and we got finished floor levels as part of the approved plans as well. So we have got enough information to make a balanced judgment on the impact on residential amenity for neighbouring properties. So officers have made that judgment, have looked at the distances, and we do deem them to be acceptable. Obviously that is outlined fully within the report. I do appreciate some of the concerns that members have of making decisions virtually and using the site videos. As I've said previously, through this process, we've submitted, provided enough information, or sufficient information to do the site videos, the plans in front of you, and we have to use a balanced judgment with regards to council officers going out and reviewing the developments. But as outlined in the report, on balance, we do feel that the impact on residential amenity is acceptable. I think that the condition suggested by Councillor Howard is reasonable with regards to permitted development, and I would encourage that to be used. I think it's a good point to make. I just wanted to clarify the point in terms of amenity on neighbouring properties, in terms of where officers stand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, do we miss our site visits on a Monday? But there again, we have to go with what we've got, the cards that we're dealt at the moment. Thank you for that, Craig. Councillor Easton wished to comment, then Councillor Brown, and then I'll go to the vote. Councillor Easton first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Are the officers satisfied with the car parking provision and the display of visibility getting onto the road? Because looking at the block plans, I presume that there's a shared parking with a property next door, and access and egress, as it seems on the block plan, doesn't seem very good to me. But are the officers satisfied with that in terms of the display of the property to get onto the road?
Well, the highways must have been, I should imagine.
Yeah, I see the highways and I'm turning it down, but
Yeah, just to confirm, Councillor, so there's no highway objections to the development. It's a shared access and there's considered to be enough parking provision for both properties.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, quickly, please.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the height levels between the new property and the properties opposite. You know, because if the lay of the land is different or higher or lower on one side or the other, obviously, even if they're a similar height, it may make a difference in terms of overlooking. And the other question I wanted to ask is about clarifying the car parking spaces, because I'm not sure how many bedrooms there are proposed in each property and the existing property and the new one. Thank you.
Do you wish to comment on that, please, Andrew or Craig?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on Councillor Brown's points there, proposed dwelling is for a 4-bedroom property, so the 3 spaces attributed to that site is policy compliant. The original dwelling, Sunnybrook, didn't have the benefit of off-street parking, and parking was used on street, some of which was where the proposed access location was. Obviously that's been lost now, would be lost as a result of this development. So that's why the highways involvement has secured that off-street space for Sunnybrook. So that actually is a betterment in terms of it's now gone from having no off-street spaces to an off-street space with the parking, shared parking and turning area. And as Craig commented earlier, with a visibility display to satisfy highways. In terms of Councillor Brown's point with regards to the levels and the impact, obviously officers have had that information provided within the application that shows the difference in site levels, floor levels, and that of the highway, Glenallen Road. And having, with that information, the balanced view is still that, notwithstanding that the impact is still acceptable. So we have taken account of those changing levels.
Thank you for that, Andrew.
Sorry, I didn't get an answer about how many bedrooms the existing property is, and have you got height levels? Because obviously you've got distance levels, so it'd be helpful if you could also give height levels. And if not, why hasn't that been looked at? Thank you.
Sorry, and just clarify. So on is Councillor Brown asking the number of bedrooms of the existing property?
Yeah, the number of bedrooms of the existing property, because they can no longer park because of the access, and also the difference in the height between the new dwelling and the dwellings opposite, because it's not just a question of distance in terms of whether there's overlooking, it's also a question in terms of the height differential. And that was the question I was asking, because we've gone through all the distances, but we haven't gone through, because obviously if a property is higher, it does make a difference to the privacy aspect. Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of the number of bedrooms of the existing property, I don't have that information, I'm afraid. Although I'm not sure it's that material to what we're considering. That the property at the moment has no off-street parking. The creation of the access would potentially, disrupt that. And like I said previously, that property does now have a net gain of 1 off-street parking space. So I don't know the number of bedrooms, but obviously the proposal before us for the new dwelling is policy compliant with 3 spaces, and there is a betterment to the existing. So I'm not sure I can expand on that point much further. In terms of the ground levels and just to confirm the relationship between the height of Sunnybrook and the proposed dwelling, I haven't got a overall height of Sunnybrook, I'm afraid, but the site is half a metre lower than the patio to the rear of Sunnybrook. So I'm afraid I can't give you a definitive height. I haven't got that survey information before me, but like I said, officers have been to site, they know what the site levels are, and having regard to distances as well as the changing levels and the positioning of windows and habitable windows, they're satisfied that even the host dwelling wouldn't be caused unacceptable harm. So I'm sorry, I don't have that that survey information of the lane going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. The last one to comment this afternoon, Councillor Dovey. Welcome, Councillor Dovey. Councillor Dovey. He had raised his hand, but I've got no connection with Councillor Dovey, I'm afraid. So we'll move on. I think we've had everything clarified now, but I'll go for the first vote for a vote of deferring the application as requested by the ward member, Councillor Giles Howard. Could I have a vote first of all for deferral, please? Nothing in the chat bar as of yet, Richard. Thank you. Members can vote for deferral, against a deferral, or abstain. Could you please make your vote now? Denzel, do you wish to comment on the vote?
Yes, so we were just checking how many councillors are currently present in the meeting.
16.
There's 16 present in the meeting.
Yeah.
Are there? And
so, yeah.
so we've had 13 responses. There's 8 against deferral and 5 for deferral. But if there are 16, then it means that 3 haven't currently voted. So we may need to go to a vote by an individual vote for that.
Fine. So we'll have to do a verbal vote.
Well, can we confirm we've actually got 16? I think there's 16.
1, 2, 3. It's difficult because people come in and out as it's gone through.
That's the problem, yeah.
We've only had 13 up to now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think we're 16 today, Denzel.
9, 10.
Richard would know.
12, 13, 14, 15. I think I counted 16 now in the chat bar.
Yeah.
Right.
I believe we have 16, Chair.
Yeah, so I think if 3 have failed to vote and there's a difference of 3, I think we're going to have to go to an individual vote, Chair.
Yes, looks like it.
Chair, are you happy for me to do that?
Yes, I'm happy with you to do that, Richard.
Okay,
So
I'll
it'll
start.
be-
Sorry, Chair.
You say which is for deferral or against deferral.
Yes, I'll start with Councillor Becker. How are you voting, Councillor Becker, for or against deferral?
For deferral, please.
Okay, and Councillor Brown?
For deferral.
Okay, Councillor Clark?
For deferral.
Councillor Davis?
Against deferral.
Councillor Dovey?
Councillor Dovey?
Can you put your microphone on, please, Councillor Dovey? Chair, shall I move on and come back to
Yes,
Councillor
please.
Dovey?
Yes, please.
Councillor Easton?
For deferral.
Councillor Edwards?
Against deferral.
Councillor Evans?
Against deferral.
Councillor Feakins?
Against deferral.
Councillor Harris?
Against deferral.
Councillor Higginson. Councillor Higginson? Are you there, Councillor Higginson?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
How do you vote?
Deferral.
Against deferral. Thank you. Councillor Howard?
For deferral.
Councillor Murphy?
Against deferral.
Councillor Powell?
Against deferral.
Councillor Webb?
Against deferral.
Councillor Woodhouse? Councillor Woodhouse?
For deferral.
For deferral. We'll go back to Councillor Dovey. Councillor Dovey, are you there? I think Councillor Dovey is offline, Chair.
Right, thank you, Richard. You have tried several times.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Chair. So there are now 9 votes against deferral and 6 votes for deferral, and Councillor W wasn't able to vote. So that means that that's now clearly passed. Sorry, the motion is quite clearly against deferral, so we can move to the actual vote.
Right, thank you for that, Denzel. So now we'll go for Councillor Howard. You've lost your for deferral. How do you wish to move now the application?
Thanks, Chair. Well, on the basis that I'm not able to judge sufficiently that there'll be an acceptable impact on the amenity of neighbours, then I will have to move refusal, sorry.
Right, do you have a second of a refusal?
Yes, I'll second that.
Right, thank you. Councillor Woodhouse has seconded for refusal. Could I have a vote then for refusal, please?
Oh, I haven't got my thing up, have I? Oh, hang on.
Richard, will you put a chat bar for that now, please?
Where is it? I haven't got it yet.
No. Right. It's in the chat bar now. Please vote for refusal or against refusal or abstain.
Oh, so,
The heights of the buildings. Section. To confirm it, for enforcement purposes.
Well, Chair, I haven't got a chat bar this vote this time.
I don't have one either, Chair.
It's in the chat bar, guys. Can you
Yes.
scroll
No,
down?
I can't get it. I can scroll up and down and sideways.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Well, you can vote me abstain.
So if you omit the chat bar and then go back in, you'll find it comes up correctly.
I think if it is carried with great distance,
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
we'll
Sorry.
get the idea of what the end vote will be.
Yes, in any event, we've had 13 responses. There are 9 against refusal, 3 for refusal, and 1 abstention. So even if both members who've been unable to vote were to refuse, it wouldn't affect the outcome of the vote. So I'm quite happy to read that as 13 responses, 3 for refusal, 9 against refusal, and 1 abstention. So that vote has failed.
Just had a comment by Matthew Feekins.
Yeah, and that was for after. So obviously we've just gone through that process now, voting that. And then the next motion will be for approval, or I would move for approval, but subject to the condition that Giles mentioned regarding the roofs.
Right. Yes, fully. I think we summed up that is what would have been in the application anyway, from what Andrew had described in the beginning.
Chair, just if I may, but as a point of order, could we repeat back to us what that condition would be in regards to the roof?
Yes, I'll get Andrew to do that now, Councillor Feakin, and then you'll all know then what you voted for. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm what members would be voting for. So firstly would be, say, voting to approve the application subject to the signing of the 106 and the conditions already in the report. And the first sort of addition to that would be for the discrepancy on the plans, the ground floor patio doors to be added to the elevations and to be agreed by the delegated panel, as I noted.
That's right.
The condition, perhaps Councillor Howard may wish to comment on this. With regards to the condition, we can either remove the relevant part of Part 1 of the General Permitted Development Order in respect of alterations to the roof, or he may wish to comment on whether we remove Part 1 in its entirety, and perhaps I'll offer that to Councillor Howard, as it was his suggestion initially.
I'm just wondering that we've had so many votes on this. Now that you've summed up that now, do we need to vote again for that approval as to what you have summed up, Andrew?
Well, I think the summary was with the ground floor door to be agreed by the panel and the condition removing permitted development rights. I mean, as it was discussed during the meeting, it was only for alterations to the roof. So if that's clean, we can condition just that element within the general permitted development order, that it's extensions and alterations to the roof only, and all of the part rights would remain intact. So that's what members will be voting for.
And Chair, for clarity, that's what I would propose. That's what I would propose as my motion.
So very difficult to hear you, Andrew. It was very crackly. It's very, very crackly coming through.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair, do you wish to make me to repeat?
Yes, please repeat now what members of the committee are expected to be clearly voting on.
Yeah, so they will be voting for to approve application DM 2018-01418, subject to the signing of the 106 agreement, subject to the conditions already within the officer's report, for the ground floor balcony French doors to be agreed as shown on the elevation by the delegated panel, and for permitted development rights in respect of roof extensions and alterations to be removed as an additional condition.
And the 106.
And the signing of the 106 agreement.
Right, so if you agree with that, and there's a new chat bar there, vote on now of what Andrew has summed up, please.
There's no chat back up for me.
Please be patient, it hasn't come for me yet.
I got it this time.
Right.
See.
Right.
Yes. Sorry, Chair. I think that there's a comment there that points out that no one seconded that yet.
I'm happy to second it, Chair.
Right, thank you. We've had such a load of votes on one application this afternoon. Seems quite a clear decision to me, Denzel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I believe there are 15 currently present, 11 have voted. There are 8 for, 2 against and 1 abstention. So even if the 4 were to vote against, it would still be carried. And so, yes, I'm happy to say that that's quite clearly for, and that vote is passed.
Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Feakin has put a chat bar message, and Councillor Murphy has seconded, if that's okay with you, Councillor Feakin. So that has now been carried. Everyone happy with that? I hope they are. I think that is the end of our applications for this afternoon. I will now sign the minutes as I suggested at the end. I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, but I'm sure you all know by me and those outside that are live streaming. I'm County Councillor Ruth Edwards, Chair of the Planning Committee. I hope everybody out there is keeping well and abiding by all the rules, and hopefully we will carry on as much as we can with the planning in Monmouthshire to keep on working and keep on keeping the hope of a good many people in the county going forward. Thank you all very much for your attendance, and please keep safe. Thank you all indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair.